Welcome to the Way After Dark podcast, part of the WKRO family of channels. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Ellis. On this show, we'll talk about our favorite scary movies with our panel of industry experts and favorite guests. On this episode, we're discussing the classic, John Carpenter's Halloween.
Way After Dark.
Talking about Halloween. We have media historian Katie Palumbo. We have producer, author, writer, executive Jeremy Ellis. We have host of the Nick Taylor Horror Show and indie horror producer Nick Taylor, and myself, Sean Canino, talking about probably one of the seminal movies in all of the genre. And maybe we should just go around. Where were you guys when you first saw the movie? How did it resonate with you? I don't know, Nick, if you want to start.
Sure. Well, I was always a horror kid growing up. I grew up on a lot of I grew up in late 80s, early 90s, so I was there for a lot of just classic gateway horror, which got me into horror like Beetlejuice and Monster Squad and kind of some of the softer stuff. And I would beg my parents to let me watch horror movies, but it was a hard, nothing above PG-13 rule. Then when I was about 12 for Halloween, they thought, it might be fun to watch for the actual holiday Halloween. They called Howard at the video room, shout out to Howard, and asked him,
Where was the video room?
Yeah.
Video room was New York, Upper East Side.
Oh, nice.
I don't know that I remember the video room.
Oh, really? It was really close to Birch, where
Was
we went
it?
to
Okay.
where we went to grade school and high school. Sean and I. I want to say it was on Lexington between I want to say 78th and 79th, roughly.
Okay.
It was awesome. They
The main
delivered.
streets.
They would deliver to your home. You can call them up, and they would send videos to your home.
I gotcha.
Pre-Netflix era.
Okay.
So they were amazing. They hung on right after Blockbuster died for a good long time. But
them.
anyway, yeah, great for them. But yeah, my parents called and said, "Hey, we want to watch a Halloween-related movie with our son, something scary but not too intense." And he recommended Halloween, and I think I was like 11 years old. So this was the first hard R horror that I had ever seen. So absolutely blew my mind, scared me. It was wonderful. I watched it with my parents, who were not avid horror fans. They later took me to go see Scream, which we will talk about soon. But yeah, I watched it with my parents, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I'd never seen hard R horror before, and it was very eerie, very scary, got under my skin, and I was exhilarated by it.
Amazing. Jeremy.
I came to Halloween actually, surprisingly enough, late. I was born 1977. So my early first masked serial killer discovery was Friday the 13th and Jason. And after I'd watched the first couple of those, which involves him getting his mask, I think it was my uncle, who was pretty seminal in terms of my own horror education, my Uncle Rick, who was like, oh, well, you've seen Halloween. And like all good uncles, there was absolutely no filter of it's probably not for you yet. It was like, hey, you're, 11, 12. It was about that same age. and you should go check it out. And again, tribute to the video stores, the forgotten video stores. I went to it was Legend Video on, Mineola Avenue, and went in there and found Halloween and was like, okay, let's pop this thing in. And that was it. And it was classic VHS, sitting at home waiting for mom and dad to be out, or honestly maybe even going into the basement, get in the basement. And went into the basement and played with some G.I. Joes and threw on Halloween. And it was one of those movies that I just remember even more than Friday the 13th, which was, I love those movies, but Halloween I was, transfixed. It was just from that opening scene. I was hooked, so that was my
And that
experience.
score too. I mean, that's it's even if you didn't know, even if that was for me. I didn't see the movie before I knew what the score was, and the score was over every sort of best of horror anthology, and I came to it relatively late. But and I saw it on DVD. I think when I was probably
DVD.
in college
There
or
you go.
something. Back when we all had DVDs. There you go.
I still do.
Yeah.
still-
No, I actually have pride in a DVD collection. My wife has sort of put them in the cupboard, so now it's all out of order. Actually, well, my son will crawl around and take all the DVDs out, so now it's in absolutely no order. Anyway, when we used to have DVDs, that was and when some of us still do have DVDs, that's sort of when I got into it, when I was renting everything, and that was part of my education into film generally, just because it was such an iconic movie. But I hijacked Katie's story, so Katie, I'd love to hear yours.
Oh, well, my DVDs are in an old suitcase that the zipper doesn't work anymore in the basement.
Oh,
but
no.
I think I actually saw Halloween on digital for the first time. Like, I streamed it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see it until I was in my 20s. And I liked it. I think because I was like marathoning so many things, it didn't really jump out to me at first until there's a scene where Jamie Lee Curtis stabs Michael Myers with a knitting needle and to protect the kid she's babysitting. And I was working as a nanny at the time and would knit when the kids were napping. And I saw that and was like, never mind, this is my movie. I love this.
Yeah, I think the thing about this particular one is that it's such an iconic film that everybody has some sort of awareness of where they were when they first saw it, or when, and just how it resonated with them. And I guess we can go over a few
should we do some vital stats?
Vital stats. Do you want to go to the vital stats, or should I go to the vital stats?
We can do it together. We're obviously directed by the great John Carpenter, right?
Yes.
Seminal movie for him, and it would, you have to mention Deborah Hill, who co-wrote it with him and was his producer, and his wife.
His wife or girlfriend? I think it was his girlfriend at the time. Some of the fact checkers will help us out with that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But then they split during production. Yeah,
She went on to produce Adventures of Babysitting with Linda Obst. God rest her soul.
I like that movie.
But good movie. So, and of course, starring at the time, most famous actor in the movie was Donald Pleasance. He was like your veteran get actor. I think I've heard has spent a lot of the shoots inebriated, perhaps, which is one of the things we can talk about, because I do think casting in these movies is sort of key to their appeal.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the coin, of course, is Jamie Lee Curtis, who would go on to cement the idea of the final girl. And the Scream Queen. I think the original Scream Queen. It has to be said.
She's the first.
She's the first. She's the first. Hard to be the first. It's good to be the first. So, I'm going to now, Mustafa Akkad produced, right? Like, as a producer, I think, I don't want to speak for Sean, but I will say, like, the Mustafa Akkad Presents was always, like,
you don't get that. No.
Like, you thought it had that feeling of, like, wow, something sort of significant is happening.
Yeah, I should know who this is.
Should know who this is, yeah.
But it was around $300K was the budget.
Yep.
And then it, from what I can read, grossed around $70 million.
Spawned how many movies now?
What is
it, like, how many movies, prequels? Like, just,
I think it's
there
like
were
10.
four.
10, like,
right, and then there's the
You count the Rob Zombie ones.
The Rob Zombie ones, too, that's right.
Yep.
So it's got to be like 10,
Yeah.
something like that. There you go. Fact checkers will check in on that one.
And then almost, as far as my research goes, which is probably, checkered at best, but around almost $900 million in terms of the entire franchise. So almost $1 billion franchise from this small indie, horror flick, which, horror has unfortunately sometimes not the best reputation in terms of prestige and among, the critics and all that stuff. But this is one of the, the biggest success stories when you consider what the investment was and just how it transcends not only cinema, but I think also, also just like our general awareness. I'm sure, like when we were kids, when we were trick or treating, there were a few of those masks that you went to the Halloween store. You had the Michael Myers mask, or the William Shatner, or whatever, whatever it was. You had the Freddy Krueger, and you had the Jason. And like when you were out, like all the kids had those. That was, and so just the general. And this movie, you can make the very, very easy argument, inspired those other movies. So not only was it this franchise that, the Halloween franchise that this one movie helped spawn, but, many, many others of, high success rates.
Yeah, it started the big slasher boom of the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, it was followed by Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street came shortly thereafter. Tim, I'm not a big fan of the Friday the 13th franchise. We can talk about that later, but I think it's actually the most dull franchise of them all. But it felt, for me, very derivative of Halloween.
White
You stole my hot take. I don't love Friday the 13th either.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I always felt like Halloween and Friday the 13th were like the McDonald's and Burger King of slasher, or like the Nike and Reebok,
Sure,
of like
yeah.
the Jordan and Magic Johnson in that slasher flick. Like, what's your, like, which team were you on, at least in the, now this may be because of the age I was at, coming of age in the 80s slasher flicks, and then, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street came in. Nightmare on Elm Street was for me like the Michael Jordan at that point.
Oh yeah, a pound for pound, it might
Scared the-
arguably be the best franchise as a whole.
As a whole.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like that, like, who would win in a fight,
Right,
Michael or
right.
Jason? Like, there's always been that kind of
Right.
friendly rivalry in the
Who
fandom.
would win in a fight? It's exactly what it is. All right, nice. Well, so while we're on the subject, I mean, who do you guys remember where you were when you first saw Halloween? Since we're all obviously sort of slightly different ages, and we talked about that. Or I guess the real question is not where you were when you saw it, but rather, did you just watch it for the first time recently, or have you like always watched it? Some people are like kind of traditionalists. Halloween's fast approaching. You know, AMC's going to have their marathon. You can
Right.
fill them up. Some people watch it every year.
It's a rewatch for me, probably every 2-3 years, maybe more. I like showing it to people who've never seen it before.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, it can come across as a little tame, especially compared to today's, Terrifier standards or whatever, but I am always struck at the craftsmanship of it. The scares, the music, the way it all kind of pulls together. Carpenter was a real auteur.
Yeah.
And I feel like the subsequent movies didn't quite have that same magic.
Did you, do you feel that it's in the same vein as the present day slashers like a Terrifier, which is so gory, so so excessive in certain, and I'm a fan of I've only seen Terrifier 2 at this stage, but I was a fan of that movie.
Yeah.
For what it was, but I don't necessarily view that and Halloween as the exact same genre.
No, definitely not. Different subgenres. I mean, I think Terrifier, the term they're using is, I think it's like gore epic or something.
Sure.
Or no,
That's very
mega slasher. Sorry, mega slasher. Which is more, for me, and more in line with Friday the 13th, which was like a lot of fun kills, but there's not a lot in terms of character development and nuance and storytelling the way there was in Halloween. I think that it's today's answer to Friday the 13th. And I said I was not a Friday the 13th fan. I love Terrifier, though. I love everything it represents, the indie story of just absolute, gonzo success and bringing back practical effects in a big way. And it's opening the floodgates for unrated horror to do really well now. Eli Roth is starting his own company, and we're going to see what can come out of that guy's brain, when you don't have studio oversight. So I think it's blowing the doors off of horror. I love Terrifier. But I wouldn't say it's the same. There's a nuance to Halloween that I don't really necessarily see in Terrifier.
For sure.
It's also been so long since there's been like an iconic
Yeah.
a Michael, a Freddy, and I feel like Art the Clown is on his way there.
100%.
Right.
And it's, you've had things that everybody dressed up as for Halloween, but that didn't get to that iconic level, and I think that's where Terrifier's going.
And tattoos. People were getting after the first movie came out, which not a lot of people saw, but hundreds of people were getting tattoos
Of the Terrifier.
of Art the Clown.
yeah.
See, there you go. Like, you didn't see a lot of people getting the Michael Myers tattoo, but it still became iconic.
Still became iconic.
Speaking of iconic, all right, Halloween, where opening scene, young Michael Myers, who, by the way, we should say was played by Tony Moran. I forgot to give that credit in the opening credits. Would be remiss in the original. What do you think, Sean? Opening scene, where does it rank for you? Like scariest? You have a sister?
It's a great twist, right? Because it's like, okay, well, it's this little kid, and in some ways that's the scariest thing of all, and I'm sure you relate to, like, as a father, like, I don't think my kid's a serial killer, but like I can never be too sure. He has some he has some kind of sociopathic tendencies. He's only 16 months old.
Give it time.
Hopefully that goes away.
Hopefully.
But yeah, exactly. But like, that is a real thing. It's like, I watched it recently. You're asking like when I watched it recently, and I was like, okay, well, your kids do the exact opposite thing that you want them to do. So what if you just like picked up a knife and started stabbing people? I don't think that's going to happen. I think the scene was clever to get to your question. I think it was a super clever scene. And, one thing that I think is interesting and was sort of worth talking about the entire movie, and why I personally don't think Halloween is a super scary movie, is because we are in the point of view of Michael Myers quite frequently during the movie. And so there really aren't many real jump scares. I think there, the Ringer Amy Nicholson's podcast did an episode on that. I think there were like 2, right?
2 jump scares in Halloween.
Yeah, I think that's what they listed. Maybe there are more, but like
There's not a lot.
in terms of how I view it, it's like, okay, do I view it as a scary movie? I personally don't. I understand why people do think that. It's because you're not really surprised by it. You see Michael Myers coming the entire movie, and you're in his perspective. And I think the Michael Myers character, to me, is super interesting because from all accounts, Carpenter wanted him to represent just human evil and the evil that is within a lot of people. And that's why the mask, is the Shatner mask, right? It's a person. It's a blank face. So
We'll get into the mask. We'll have to talk the mask.
Yeah. So, but it's just like, how some people, stories of he was growing up, in the South and saw people, just point their guns and shoot at people of color and that kind of thing, and that sort of informed his opinion of what evil was, right?
Carpenter saw this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So again, I think that sort of every person, it could be the kid, it could be, the person next door, but evil exists is a big theme that sort of goes through the Michael Myers character. And I think that is scary, right? And so even if you're not necessarily scared by, the shock value of certain moments, you're scared by the fact that, oh, there is this person who just likes killing people. And Carpenter made a movie saying, like, yes, that exists in this world. And so, again,
He's right.
roundabout, my roundabout way of saying, that first scene, to me, doesn't strike as terrifying when you see it. But when you think about everything that's behind it,
right,
it actually is really terrifying.
And they don't really go into the pathology of Michael Myers, even though Dr. Loomis, the whole movie, is talking about him. He just says, yep, pure evil. That's all he is. We don't know why, as a 7-year-old or however old he was, he suddenly killed his sister. We get no psychological background on that. It just spontaneously happens.
Right.
And the blankness of the face, I think it allows people to project their own conception of evil into this character, which is always way scarier.
Yeah. Well, and also it's that thing of, and you think, okay, somebody does something evil and terrible. It's not that it's any comfort to know that they're doing it with kind of emotion or passion, but the idea that you feel nothing is really the embodiment of like psychopathy or sociopathy or whatever you would call it. And so first of all, you have to give Carpenter credit, right? Like kind of like almost the first found footage. Like I feel like
in a way,
it's not literally, but I was watching and I was struck by it just as a stylistic thing. Like the whole puts on the mask and you're following it. It's all the first person perspective, and it does. I think you said, Sean, really sort of starts you off in the mindset of the killer. But there's nothing. There's like it's not the creepy brother, right? He doesn't look weird when the mask comes off. Like. And there's all these things that even like the near miss of the boyfriend coming down the stairs, which of course that whole thing of like, I think is another an important thing that sort of that Carpenter's establishing, like maybe not exactly motive, but obviously the boyfriend hopping into the bed with the sister and she's like naked when he walks in. That's the only part that's a little creepy. I think she's like naked when he walks in and she's sort of like, Michael, like what are you doing here? It's like wouldn't be my first reaction. If my sister had walked in and seen me naked and vice versa, I'm sure it would even be worse. But
and she's annoyed, not scared. Michael,
right?
Yeah.
Like she's annoyed. Oh, this is my brother who wanders around the house in a clown costume with a knife. Like that's his thing,
right? And like even the parents aren't surprised to see him when he comes outside. So the whole thing is sort of banal horror, which is, really, really terrifying. And so, that I have to say, I mean, it's funny. I asked myself, did I think this movie was scary? And we can get into all of that. And it was really interesting watching this movie in the context of the other movies we watched, which we'll get into. But as far as first scenes go, I mean, you have to really hand it to Carpenter. Like there's this movie and Escape from Precinct 13, where the little girl's eating the ice cream and the guy just cold blood guns her down right there. Like, I feel like in the things that would get you canceled today, right? He gets away with it in Halloween. You definitely are not doing Assault in Precinct 13. But I feel like that sort of banality of just evil is sort of present, even though Michael Myers seems to be the furthest thing in the world from like whatever LA gangbanger, crew that was. So I still, even in watching that, and it's creepy to see it as a father too, because it is that thing of like, you think, Well, my kid's not like a killer, you know,
Right.
and who knows, God forbid. But yeah, so I have to give it a high mark for that.
Its
Yeah.
time period too. 1977 when it's being made, 78 when it's released, is right at the beginning of the serial killer boom. So that
Oh, yeah.
idea that somebody who looks totally normal could be doing this or could be like this, and you know, Mindhunter hasn't happened yet. We don't know why at that point. So you have people feeling like they're in danger from normal looking people and for no reason. And then you have Michael Myers, who looks like every kid in your neighborhood and kills people for no reason.
Right.
That's a great point, and I think that, you know, it's probably good for the genre that Michael Myers was the first, you know, of these villains to be dramatized, because if you started with Freddy Krueger, then it's like, okay, well, that's you know, this sort of monster that kills you in your sleep. Oh, you know, it you have to suspend more disbelief for that. But I think audiences might have been more ready for Freddy Krueger because of Michael Myers, because of Jason, and because, you know, but Michael Myers had to be the first because of, like, oh yeah, there's Ted Bundy and, you know.
Off the heels of Manson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, technically, isn't the first slasher Leatherface? Wasn't that, what was that, 75?
75?
74, I think.
Yeah.
Pre,
74.
I think
And
it
Black
did, yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Billy
Oh,
from Black Christmas.
Oh, yeah, good point.
I don't know which came out first, Texas Chainsaw.
I mean, can you call
or...
Texas Chainsaw a slasher? Probably not.
I
It doesn't
don't-
fit the
Serial
kinda-
killer, though. You can call
serial
it a serial
killer
killer.
for sure.
You know what? I think the fact that it's the family makes it complicated. I
Yeah.
think it's... Texas Chainsaw kind of walks that line on slasher movie, because even though Leatherface is iconic, it's not... Leatherface is out doing his thing.
Yeah,
Right.
he's
It's
he's
the family.
into it.
The
It's
whole
more he's
family.
more
Yeah.
Norman Bates in the sense that, like, he's keeping to himself in his little house, or
Right.
him and his dad and his brother, and the grandpa, like, you know, in their home, and you know, but Michael Myers is just living in your neighborhood.
Well,
Yeah,
that was,
Michael Myers will come into your
right,
house.
Yeah.
that was the genius. The Haddonfield, you have to say something about Haddonfield. The setting of the place, I feel like Michael Myers, you know, if you really want to write, you got to give Psycho the credit as the first
Yep,
sort
for
of
sure.
slasher serial killer, and that's 60 or 61. So this is already 15, 16, 17 years later, whatever it is. My math is terrible. That's why I'm not a writer. But, you know, I think that's the thing it did, because we were talking about the other movies. You know, Leatherface is the whole premise of Texas Chainsaw is you're like in the backwoods of Texas on the road that you shouldn't
Right.
be on. Like Psycho is very much like the motel that you shouldn't have pulled off the road. Like the
You
best
entered
could say
their
is off the
territory.
interstate.
Yeah.
Right, you
Yeah.
entered their territory.
Like Jaws.
Whereas like Haddonfield is literally everywhere, right? There's a line actually in one of the Freddy Krueger movies where he's like, every town has an Elm Street, but it's really like every town is a Haddonfield. And I think that, you know, the other thing about the Michael Myers franchise that's so interesting is it really, in the premise of the slasher sort of serial killer of the 70s, Zodiac, all that stuff happening then, it begins, right? Is he supernatural? Like in the beginning, like you get this impression that Michael Myers, and I would say it's not an impression, it seems pretty clear, like is not the least bit supernatural.
Right.
And in keeping with that sort of like, he could be right there, like there's none of the, you know, kind of like weird lurking, like for the first 25, 30 minutes of the movie, and I'm always amazed whenever I see movies in the 70s, like how much time they take, right? Just so much time is spent setting up. There's a lot of good scares, the opening, there's the escape from the mental institution, sure, but like just once you get to Haddonfield, just him plodding around the town, watching everybody. And like I forgot, like he steps right, like the kid runs into him. There's like that scene in the school, like
Yeah.
the kid runs right into him. Like that never happens. I feel
Right.
like in a horror film until it became sort of self-referential later on.
Right.
Like it was always Freddy shows up in your dream alone. You know, Jason was always there when you've like gone off into the woods by yourself. But like there's Michael Myers
Just
and because
bumbling around.
right? Because it's
You
Halloween.
find him in Target.
Nobody's
You can
like,
see him from the school.
yeah, like because it's Halloween, and like they're just all walking around,
Yeah.
which is great. Like it could be. That's what's so cool about the second one is it starts right and he's just like right in town on his way to the hospital, just like walking through town, and people are like, "Oh, great costume,
Slow
great
pace.
costume."
Yeah.
There is, so I live in a town that goes hard for Halloween. It's in the suburbs, but people travel from the city to come here.
Nice.
What town
And
is that? Are you
It's in Katona.
okay?
Now, people go to Katona
Katona.
for Halloween. It's amazing,
good Halloween place,
very
isn't it?
kid-friendly. There is one guy, he's there every year, who dresses as Michael Myers and doesn't say anything to anybody
Wait,
and
what?
just lurks.
Do we know who that guy
That's
is?
awesome.
I do
like
not
that.
know who that guy
That's
is.
not
I'm
great.
sure
Get him on the
somebody
podcast.
knows,
Let's
but
get that
I
guy.
don't.
Yeah.
I'll ask him. I'll leave him our card.
Is this the guy on Instagram who dresses up as Michael Myers and he's got a kid who dresses up as Michael Myers?
This is
and
just
they like
a
play.
lone adult man
Okay.
who
I don't-
just hangs out.
That's
I don't
awesome.
know.
That's like great
It-
on Halloween and every other day of the year.
It
Like,
is-
stay the hell away from that guy.
It is beyond a costume and into LARPing.
Does he act like?
Whoa.
He just stands there and then he moves to another location.
But this is only
and
during
just-
Halloween or in the
on
month of.
Halloween night while
Okay.
all the kids are trick or
If he
treating.
did it in like September, like led up to
Oh,
it, that
I
would
kn-
be wildly
right?
creepy, but
It-
awesome.
But yeah, but that's my point. Is this guy does this with just a costume, and it drives home that Michael Myers doesn't need anything than his coveralls and his like Michael
Yeah.
Myers doesn't have fancy equipment or supernatural power. Like this random dude in
Yep.
Katona has exactly the same, access to
Right. He could be Michael
items
Myers,
as Michael
essentially.
Myers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
You don't need to run fast. You can take your sweet time and
Oh yeah.
get to where you're going. Yeah, that's the creepy thing about the speed at which he walks. It indicates an inevitability that he's going to get you on his own time.
And Halloween, and I mean this in the best possible way, it is a movie that takes its time.
Yeah.
Even that
pacing back then
opening
was
scene,
different.
I watch it every year. In the morning while I'm getting ready, I watch Hocus Pocus. I do whatever I'm doing for Halloween.
Nice.
I come home and I watch Halloween. That's every year.
Hocus Pocus.
And I'm a 90s kid.
I will
Hocus
save that
Pocus
for
all
the
way.
next,
We'll,
but,
we'll
you
do
know,
a Hocus Pocus
The Hocus
episode.
Pocus, but
But
it's a knowledge reference.
every year I watch Halloween and I'm like, this opening scene is longer than I remember. Like him walking around the house is longer than I remembered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Laurie walking down the street is longer. But that movie does it well and times it well that it feels suspenseful instead of boring.
It's very intentional. You can tell he's building tension, building fear, building scares, and
Yeah.
the score really helps that. in a
Yeah,
beautiful
and he's a
way.
musician. I mean,
And he's
so,
a musician.
It shows.
You know, and
The
that
Carpenter scores are great.
it makes, it definitely
Those
makes
little
the
stingers, man.
Yeah,
Oh
stingers are
god,
great.
so good,
Yeah.
so good.
I know.
So
I would
iconic.
love to know what he used actually, what instruments he used.
He's
Not-
like all
It
keyboard.
was a synthesizer, right?
It sounded very
That's his
synthy.
whole he's one of those
Yeah.
him and Michael Mann with the Tangerine Dream, like the
Oh,
synth
yeah.
discussion of like late 70s, 80s, and
Because
you know,
that, but yeah, it's
he
like,
made it
you
work,
think, you
man.
think synth, you think 80s, but yeah, I guess this was just
But it
getting
goes-
into that. And,
It goes all the way back. Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees had one of the first Moogs ever.
I got you.
And late Monkees has this like crazy synth stuff. They got very
Totally.
psychedelic.
well, and also you have to say again, Carpenter being his own sort of film student, right? Like
Yeah.
not literally, but as Bernard Herrmann's score for Psycho obviously had all the stingers of the strings and the violins, and so
Yeah.
I think there was clearly that homage, if you will, to it, but. We've both sort of touched on one of the things that I think is also really great about Halloween, which, in terms of like the iconography, we have obviously the mask, which we should talk about. You mentioned William Shatner. Don't sue us, in case that's not true, which I know that is. We have the kitchen knife, which again was another one of those interesting things to look back on, kind of like the hockey mask of Friday the 13th, or like
Very
it's not
domestic
always
stuff.
present the way that you think it is from the beginning, right? He is with the kid, but then he's like strangling people and he's doing other things, and so it really does sort of feel like the ultimate serial killer in that, like he could just kind of get you in any way. But the whole walking slow, one thing about that is, and Nightfall coming, there are certain things about horror movies that I feel like when they're in place and they're traditional, I do love. Even it's fun to upend them, and the whole idea of night falling, the sun setting, like getting to that point. I don't care if it's like Lost Boys and the Vampire. It has this, which is another movie we're going to talk about, but like it brings on that dreamlike quality. And Halloween only sort of plays with it with the slow walk and the music, and then everything else feels very sort of grounded, maybe up until like the end, and we can talk about that. But I do. I feel like that definitely, certainly for Nightmare on Elm Street and other movies, kind of really set the tone. But it's one of the things that, to me, does make the movie sort of endure, is that there's jump scares and scary, but this movie just leaves you with that feeling after you've watched it of like, like a little creep. Like
Yeah.
you need a minute after you watch.
It's
this stuff.
ethereal. It feels like
Yeah.
you're in your own nightmare watching it. It's very enveloping tonally.
Right,
Yeah.
you can't get away from the guy.
And Friday the 13th did not have that.
No, didn't have that.
Well, and there's no like normal adults in Halloween because most of the characters are either
Adults is
kids.
definitely okay. Go ahead.
Kids or I say normal
no,
adults.
that's important. I love that. Normal adults. It's a big thing.
Because the kids are kids,
Right.
the girls are teenagers, and their boyfriends are teenagers. And Loomis, we know
He's just
Loomis is a
shouting
force for good, but he is unhinged. If
shouting
somebody
into the-
walked into
yeah.
your house or your town
Right.
and was like, "Evil is coming,"
Right.
like you would not feel safe with that man.
Well, it's that Nietzsche quote that beware when you stare into the void stares back. Those who hunt monsters become monsters. So you can tell that his sanity is unwinding.
But at
And
any point,
there's-
did Michael Myers' parents say like, I don't. This doctor is shit. This is a
Yeah.
shitty
know.
doctor.
They're
Like,
going,
what is he saying about our kid?
The movie I want is like halfway between the beginning of Halloween and the end of Halloween. Like we want to see Michael Myers in the hospital at like 14, 15.
Right.
What was that like?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rob Zombie movie does that, but in
which
its own
we have
Rob
to talk
Zombie
about
way.
for a second and why that goes wrong. But I want to finish. Yeah, go ahead.
But
Definitely have to
yeah,
go back to
so Loomis is acting unhinged. The nurse is only in it for 5 minutes. Marion Chambers,
Yes.
only there. And then even the sheriff is so in denial. Every time we see the sheriff, he's going, "It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal." So as a kid, teenager, who is the safe adult in Haddonfield? Nobody's answering their door. Everybody has a babysitter. They're all gone. There is no safe adult.
See now,
Good point.
okay. So now I'll tell you that's funny because I actually felt like, yes, it's true the adults are absent, but I didn't get that impression only because of that scene with the cop. Yes, of course he doesn't believe him, but like he does, like he sticks in the bushes. By the way, we have to spend some time on Donald Pleasance because the performance is amazing.
Are
Loomis
you
is
about
amazing.
to say, "Get your ass away from there"?
Fucking, like there's stuff like I feel like one of the things we definitely it's we talk about time capsule. I love a horror movie because I think one of our sort of awards topics is time capsule and mass media movies are mass media and they're a reflection of the culture and the time. But like when Loomis is like with the cop, the sheriff like next to him and he's like saying like creepy things to get the kid to go away, like you sort of feel like the cop would have been like, this is my role. Like you just like when we catch the lunatic who you let get out, like that's your role.
Stay in your
I'll
lane
get the
there,
kids not
Loomis.
to walk up to the creepy house,
No.
which isn't even that creepy in some ways compared to like the house in It, which goes like
No.
full creep.
My favorite Loomis moment, though, in the beginning, when they say he can't even drive a car. And he just
Yeah.
so
Well, it's
exasperated.
pretty
Well, he
well.
was doing very well last
yeah,
night.
yeah, very well. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Which raises more questions because, yeah, he can drive a car.
Right.
Yeah, that I think you're suspending your disbelief. Like it's maybe in the asylum he was learning to drive.
I don't think I would have noticed if that line wasn't there. To be honest, if
Right.
that line wasn't there, I think years later someone would have said, "How can he drive a car?" And I would have realized that it never even occurred
Well,
to me.
that comes from a really annoying studio note. But the fact that
great
this
point.
is
That's a great point.
but the fact that this is an independent movie begs the question that somebody really close to the project probably had a really big problem with that logic, which I understand. I don't think it really, obviously it didn't matter to the success of the film and
No.
to the people who love it, but it is just like one of those funny things that it's like, oh yeah, I guess
Yeah.
he
Learned
knew.
how to drive somehow.
Yeah.
No one's
it out.
walking out of the theater going, "But how could he drive a car?"
And a
Yeah.
That's
stick, no
not
less.
what's with you.
There are definitely people who think that. But
There are people who
Yeah.
think that, but when you see Halloween and
Yeah.
the credits roll,
That's
your
probably-
first thought isn't, "But how did he know how to drive a car?"
See, but a lot of these things I feel like come up, and this is sort of what I miss about filmmaking. It's kind of the thing I love about indie because when you don't have, there's that great Orson Welles quote that says like the lack of limitations is the enemy of creativity. And you think about how movies were made then, like you didn't know what you'd shot,
Right.
right? It was you come back the next day, right? Well, maybe watch the rushes if you can even do that on an indie, probably not. And these days, because also we have the history of all the horror films and because we have studio notes and because we're, oftentimes just thinking about it intelligently ourselves and you're watching it over and over again, like you can kind of almost in an effort to sort of smooth everything out, there's a scene and I think it's in the Maltese Falcon where like the guy, like the limo driver ends up dead or something and somebody went up to, I don't know if it was Chandler or whoever it was afterwards and they said like, "So who killed the limo driver?" And he like, "Oh yeah, like, I don't know. It's a great question."
Who
Like,
shot
well,
Nice Guy Eddie and
right? Still, right? Like it's the mistakes of the indies or it's the things like he got into a car, he drove. I don't know, like you don't overthink it, and a lot of that stuff I actually feel like goes to what you were saying, Nick, which is like I want the first 15 years in the asylum. Like in some ways, like I love like what the hell is the next day in that asylum?
Yeah, right.
Because how did they all get out? Like that could not have been a good scene.
No.
Not a good scene.
Yeah, there's just so much storytelling that they don't even touch on in the world building where like you can project all these other conceptions around it. That's how big this movie feels.
Right. And you have to I feel like leaving room for that in the story and in storytelling is something to be mindful of because it really does. It's like, again, you didn't see the shark in Jaws and your imagination projects forward. You know, you don't know what this guy's about. And truthfully, even though it's so hammed up, like the Donald Pleasance, like Loomis, like he's pure evil. I looked into his eyes, it was black eyes. You're like, okay, like, all right. They better deliver on this.
Yeah.
And then, surely I think it does, obviously.
I think they do, yeah.
Clearly.
I will say, though, I actually think that first Halloween has a scary moment. Michael Myers' mask does get taken off as an adult.
Oh, that's
It's
right, for a split
only
second.
for like a second.
And he's like actually like a
And
decent
he
looking guy.
And he's a totally normal, handsome guy.
Yeah.
And I would need to double check when they caught Ted Bundy. Because I know he was active at this point. I don't know when they caught him, whether they had already caught him at this point. But there's that split second of Michael Myers is handsome and normal. And if you saw him walking down the street in any of those other Haddonfield scenes, you wouldn't look at him twice.
No.
February 15th, 1978, they caught Ted Bundy.
Okay, so Halloween would be like in the process of being made but not released yet.
Interesting.
Initial traffic stop in 1975, though, so I think we can hold.
So they and you know what? There was a composite sketch, so they knew he was handsome because the girls at Sammamish all said that. So, but yeah, then you have this split second of, oh my god, if I saw Michael Myers out of the mask, I would never know it was him. And it's just that little moment, and it's so creepy. And I think the way they do it in that movie, where it's 2 seconds, don't dwell on it, back to the mask, is perfect. I think if they would have tried to go harder on that, it would have ruined the effect.
So here's a what if, right? And I don't know if I want to have this as a hot take. It might be or may not be. If there was no mask, I'm pretty sure that the franchise would not have been as successful because the mask is so iconic. Mm-hmm. But would it have been a better movie if Michael Myers was just like a handsome dude who didn't really talk? He may have said a few things here or there, but wasn't just like this monstrous Frankensteinish presence and just killed people in the same way.
And we saw his face.
And we saw his face. Like, because to me, like the mask is a little dopey, and I think that's part of the fun of it.
The sequels got pretty dopey.
Yeah. But
it depends on the mask.
Dopey.
But it was,
I like
it's a
the mask
shit.
in
it works in the first one.
The blank shot, I like it. But
I think in 6 they had a really cheap one that's just preposterous to look
Is
at.
that I can visualize a horrible Michael Myers mask, and I don't know which movie it's from.
It's 6 or 7.
Wait, this is a good point. I like this. I just understand this. The idea that if he's, because now you get into the idea that you can see his face. What, like pathos? Like
if you can see him, if he has like a Bundy like charm to him. Now there are a lot of other movies that do this, but this movie at this time, 1978. If it's just this guy who's just coming through. And is very deliberate about killing. Not much of the movie changes. Maybe some of it does change, but probably not a lot of it does.
I think it would depend on the actor entirely.
For sure.
Agreed. Yeah. I also think I'm going to disagree a little bit in that Michael Myers is the shape.
Yeah, there we go.
He doesn't talk.
That's right.
He doesn't emote. He doesn't... Even his body language, he's very stiff.
Yeah.
And I think the mask is one more element that is blank.
Yeah.
And unless... I think it could be very unnerving if you have an actor who doesn't emote with their face at all, but that's really difficult. And I think any human emote, even really being able to see his eyes clearly, I think takes away from him being the shape.
Yeah, because the shape acts as a void through which the audience projects their deepest fears and conceptions of evil.
And a face is not a void.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think, and so this is where you mentioned the Rob Zombie franchise, Nick, and so... I think, with horror, there's like the explanation we're talking about it there, and then there's the non-explanation. And so for me, I think you got it exactly right, Katie. I agree. It's like all about projecting, and it's the shape, and right, it's the faceless mask, the neutral mask as they call it. My problem with the Rob Zombie one was suddenly, right, like all of the pathos or all of the like, here's the explanation. Right?
Yeah.
Like, he come from a broken home, and his father was an abusive ass, and his mother was a whore, and blah blah blah, and all these things. And there's this great Patton Oswalt joke. We were all talking about Star Wars before we started recording, where like he does this joke about how he meets George Lucas. He's like, I could build a time machine. I go back and I'd meet George Lucas. And he talks about, I won't do the whole joke, but how George Lucas was like, hey, you like Darth? I'm making a new Star Wars movie. And he's like, oh my God, you're making a new Star Wars? It's amazing. He's like, yeah. He's like, you like Darth Vader? He's like, oh, I love Darth Vader. Are you kidding me? He's like, Darth Vader's gonna be in it? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah. He's like, what is he like? He's got like swords, he's like fighting people. And he's like, no, he's like a little boy and his mom dies and he's sad. And he's like, oh. Okay, well, and then he's like, would you like Boba Fett? And he's like, yeah. He's like, oh, Boba Fett's in this? He's like, yeah. He's like, what's he like? He's like, well, he's like a little boy, and his dad dies, and he's sad. And Patton Oswalt literally ends the joke by saying, he's like, I don't care where the things that I love come from. Yeah. I just want the things that I love. And like that's the thing. You
mean the backstory of Han Solo's vest?
I don't
want Solo didn't move you.
I just look. Sometimes backstory light. I mean, sometimes this is what I like about TV. Right? You can have second season, and you're like, oh, this is how this team got together or something. But I do feel like when it comes to something that's scary, number one, we're all projecting our own fears, which is important. Obviously, this one is tapping into a lot of those fears. Right? It's the babysitter. It's the lone. It's the girl coming of age, and we have to talk about Jamie Lee, of course. Yeah. But I just think that part of Carpenter's brilliance, and maybe it was the product of an indie, like he didn't succumb to that. I need to over-explain. Maybe that was part of the nihilism of the 70s and the era in which it was made. If it had been made 5 years later, right, in the 80s, like, are there suddenly like, well, Jason drowned and Freddie was burned, and here's all the explanations, because suddenly you're in the like me decade, and it's like, well, I need to tell you why I killed all these people. It's like much scarier when somebody's just sitting there going like,
And then you're left to think about it, why, and all of that. I mean, the one case where I think it does work, even though it's highly criticized, is the end of Psycho, where they literally explain everything that happens. I think it's needed,
but
though.
It's at the end.
It's at the very end.
And it's a great, and by the way, it's a great explanation that probably lines up with if you took the mask off Michael Myers, and if he's sitting in a room, what do you think he was doing for 15 years? He's probably sitting there going like, I won't even touch a fly. Like, I won't even hurt a fly. I'll just sit here and stare blankly and like wait till that day that they let me out of the room and the guy turns his back and suddenly I kill everybody in the asylum and get in the car that they don't know I learned how to drive. Like, that's the Anthony Perkins at the end of Psycho. And you're like, all right, this is insane. Insane.
I also think the audience wasn't ready for Psycho with no explanation. I think in 1960, if you didn't have that explanation at the end, I don't think people would have understood. Yep. I think you have a very different audience later. And I think we talked earlier about Michael Myers as a totally normal kid. And I think for me, what I didn't love with the Rob Zombie ones is they're like, oh, he's not totally normal. Actually, everything in his life that could have been horrible is horrible. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel, and I'm not saying that there aren't people who do horrible things because they had a horrible childhood, but I think the point of Michael Myers is he's so normal and he's a void. And I think giving him that whole backstory, he's not normal and he's not a void, and to me, that's not Michael Myers anymore.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like the whole, one of the things culturally I think that we live in now is a time where it's sort of, again, we keep rationalizing and making excuses for the terrible things people do because we keep looking for the reason that they do them. I think because people don't believe that there's actual evil in the world. And I feel like, again, he tapped into that in the 70s. So, but what do we think about the other, like what else does the movie like? Parenting, any parenting tips? We talked a little bit about the parents, absentee parents.
There are
how are the kids? There were a couple of things that I thought were interesting. Like, it's interesting when we get to Scream, but like maybe it was the 70s. The kids seemed normal. Like I felt like Haddonfield was normal. I didn't think there was anything that struck me as unusual. I felt like they were kind of interacting, all that stuff, which is one of the things that I thought kind of makes it sort of timeless. I will admit, like the walking home from school as a kid, they were old enough, but there were scenes where like other kids were walking home alone, and like when I was living in LA, I was like, "You're never walking home alone again."
No, but that's
Illinois.
York, I was like, "Oh, we're in Sub right here."
Well, that's a really interesting point. So for me, like it was a world that didn't exist to me because Nick and I, we both grew up in New York City, and so that at a certain age we walked home alone. But like, I don't know about you, but at least like, when I was growing up, it's like, okay, like you got to have your head on a swivel. And so like that, you know, Haddonfield to me is just a very different existence. It to me, like, that's not, that didn't resonate at all with me, and I was fine with that. That didn't take me out of the movie. But you know, bad parenting, the cop, probably, right? Like,
the cop is better or worse than
probably worse than any, you know.
Not as well. I do like the cop. See, the reason I thought the cop was an attentive adult was I liked the part where he said, you know, families and kids. That's what that's what this is. Haddonfield is families and kids lined up all the way down the block. Well, it's just like he says, like, you've lined them up for a slaughter, according to you. It's like and he even says, like, I'll stay here for the night.
Well, and he's Annie's father.
That's
the sheriff is Annie's father.
Right. So he has right.
And I think there's an element of irony too, that he's the one saying, like, it's safe, everybody's going to be fine. And I believe his daughter is the first one to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Badly.
Yeah.
So
But okay, but again, like, you compare that to saying, and like the John Saxon cop in Nightmare on Elm Street, who's like using the kids as bait. Yeah. I needed you as bait.
Sure.
You know, like I still feel like there was this. If you were talking about this sort of time of innocence, which maybe we could look back in the '90s and say it was a more innocent time, but that was, I think, again, the whole serial killer.
Well, exactly. If you told a cop that if you told a cop in 1965 about a serial killer in your town. It doesn't mean they didn't exist, but that person's going to be like, that is so rare, I don't even know.
They don't know what you're talking about.
The term wasn't being used yet.
Right.
Versus in 1990, if you told a cop there's a serial killer in your town, they're going to react so differently because they have so much more of a frame of reference. What does that mean? What does that do?
Right.
A cop who has a teenage daughter.
Right.
If they hear that news in 1990, they're immediately, get Annie home, where is Annie?
And
he's
the
like,
network news effect of like 2025, like, in other news, an entire asylum was gutted by, you know. So have a nice, you know, like, that's all over the news these days, and people are a lot more aware. So, you know. All right. Any other?
Well, we probably should talk about Jamie Lee,
Jamie
and then
Lee.
we were talking about
Love Jamie Lee.
We were talking about her, you know, her mother's performance, and then I think that was a reason that probably she was cast, because she was having trouble getting
who's her
work.
mom? Yeah, tell the folks at home.
Janet Lee, and you know,
shower scene in Psycho, Janet Lee.
Fame.
But famous, most importantly, in Psycho, and this comes up again, because Janet Lee's the big star, and she's killed off.
Yeah.
The first, you know, so. Maybe so, like, putting her daughter in the movie, do you think, like, audiences are sitting there going, that's Janet Leigh?
And that was a reason, you know, she was having trouble getting work, and she was cast, and, you know, I think she, you know, this is maybe the role that defines her career, rather. So, yeah, I mean, and does an amazing performance, and is has equally sort of acerbic, you know, the innocent acerbic on it. Actually makes, you know, obviously she shouldn't have thrown the knife away, although I heard that was a production thing, as opposed to, but other than that, like, someone who actually makes decent choices, and I would say that that's a, you know, the horror movie trope, that was even that Geico commercial, it's like, if you're in a horror movie, you make bad decisions. In this, I can't really say that there are that many bad decisions that she makes, and I think that's a reason that people stay with this movie, is the character, they really love her character, and they really invest in that. It's like, okay, like, this is somebody who I can spend time with, I can hang out with, that kind of thing. So, you know, she, you know, even in addition to Michael Myers, is equally, if not more, responsible, I think, for the movie's success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a likable final girl, and we see her and her life, and she's very likable in the beginning of the movie. So it makes it harder to watch her being stalked, imagining her being killed.
And she feels real. She's not, like, perfectly like, we see her being sarcastic with her friends and getting made fun of and being embarrassed because the boy she likes knows she like she feels real.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I think you have some characters who are in that role in other movies who are so perfect that it almost veers into annoying.
Yeah.
But you're watching Laurie, and you either were that girl, or you know that girl, or, like...
Yeah.
She just feels very real.
Well, Jamie Lee, is this her first movie?
No. She got a lot of TV before that, I think. I don't know if she
I think
had
it's
to
her
have
first starring role.
It's her first starring role,
first
right?
starring role, for sure. Yeah.
Right, and like so here's a I don't know if it's like a hot take, but like, and I think this has been said before to be fair, but I definitely agree with it, which is that movie comes out today, same thing, right? Ignoring for a second the time differences. Jamie Lee Curtis is in that movie. Is she or is she not nominated for an Academy Award?
No, because
I don't
horror
think she
movies
is.
don't
Is
get
she?
nominated for Academy.
Well, no, but I mean, like Hallie Joel Osment. It's not like certain people have been nominated. Like I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis comes out in this movie, and she's Kirsten Dunst in Interview with the Vampire. She's like, I just thought her performance was, and this is why I think she's the Scream Queen, because I thought that the rules about the horror movie get set, and you have to give Carpenter and Deborah Hill their credit, but like the rules in part get set because of how she carries herself throughout the movie, right? Like it's never expressly said that she's virginal, obviously, even and that's not a trope that's unique to necessarily Halloween, but like she's, I think one of you said like she's I don't know if you said erudite or she's
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 acerbic.
She's acerbic, right?
Yeah,
Well,
she's cool. Like
she seems a little bit more grounded. Like all the other friends are kind of like, and all of that stuff is. Especially in like 1978, when you think about the movies are being made, and it's like the post-sexual revolution, and and Jamie Lee Curtis is like in there playing this kind of like very contained, like
she's not the stereotypical prude. She's like so she's not like totally. She doesn't seem totally out of touch. She seems very much grounded in the world with her friends, and I think that's the relatable thing about her is that maybe she isn't sort of as advanced in her social life as some of them are, and I think everybody can relate to that, right? Like you can relate to it's like, oh, like my friends have done this and then this, and it's like, okay, I'm still trying, So I think that for her, that's a big part of why that character was so appealing for so many audiences. But look,
and I would take it a step further on that same line, which is I feel like. By 1978, and this is one of the things I thought was interesting in a time capsule sense, right? Like, you have the kids who are coming over to the friend's house, the parents are out and we're hopping up into the bed to have sex, right? Like, that happens in Scream. Like, 20 years later, the exact same thing. And, like, I think that trope is still happening in movies today, probably because that was always the case. But if you go back 10 years, the idea that, like, a kid, is hopping. I mean, in 1975, All in the Family premieres, and the big controversy over that pilot was there's a scene where, like, Mike and Carol, or whatever it is, go upstairs. Gloria, thank you. Mike and Gloria go upstairs, and the censors were like, they just go upstairs. They don't, because they're going up to have sex, but that's it. They walk up the stairs, and the censors were like, no. And so, the idea that, again, Jamie Lee is sort of embodying all of that, and yet you have the other side of it, which is if I was a parent, like watching that movie and I'm watching like, oh my God, are our kids having sex when we're out? Like, is that what's happening with the babysitter thing? Is that why the girl from across the street was in our house when we came home that night? Like she wasn't watching her, like, Jamie Lee like takes all the kids. She organizes the whole thing. Like she's the greatest virginal best friend you've ever had. She's like responsible in the ruse for you to get laid and do all the things to drink.
Like, well, it started that sort of morality tale. If you have sex or you do drugs or you drink, then you get killed. But if you don't, if you're virginal, you'll probably survive.
What I think is interesting with Laurie, though, is she wants to. Like, we hear in the beginning, she's like, oh, I want to go to the dance with Ben Tramer. Like, she's shy, but interested.
Yeah, but then she says, call him back and tell him I can't. Like, that was a bad idea.
What I think is interesting with that, and the reason I bring it up, she's interested, but then gets anxious about actually acting on it.
Right.
When her friend, when Annie calls and says, oh, I told him and he wants to go to the dance with you. She's like, oh, no, I couldn't do it. So, like, the thought is in her mind. It's not that she's like, well, I don't think about boys at all.
Yeah.
It's that she has the idea, and then when there's the potential of it becoming a reality, she goes, oh, no, never mind.
Right, and that reservation, that sort of chaste reservation is interesting, because, like, even a handful of years later, right, and not even a handful of years later, like 81 or something, you have Risky Business, or 83, right, and the whole fear of Tom Cruise is the guy is like, he's going to have sex with the babysitter, right, the dreams of, get off the babysitter, son, like, it's, whereas, like, by the time you get to the 90s, even though the same thing of hopping into the beds and all that setup is the same, like, with Neve Campbell, and this is the pathos, right, like, it's part of the movie, but, like, she's what happened to her mom, and she's frigid, and she just can't do it. And it's not that it's like she's interested, but the holdback is not because she's trepidatious, because it's like that sort of forbidden fruit, the line between being virgin and, you know, girl and woman. In Neve Campbell's case, it's sort of like, no, it's just this trauma happened to me, and there's all, again, this pathos and explanation. Whereas like Jamie Lee, part of what I think makes her performance so great, and part of what makes it is she brought that concept, Nick, that you were talking about, that was like goes back to Vampire Tales, like right into like the 1970s nihilistic, where you're like, what's wrong with these kids today? And like there she is, like you almost would have pointed to her like that's my daughter, like that's absolutely my daughter, like she's the good girl, she would never, and you know, and I feel like the for her, instead of it's sex and death. Instead of sex being the thing that awakens her to her sort of reality of the world, like it's the death. What she says at the end is, and it's ironic because what she says at the end is the thing that you think of as like a kid believes in, which is she's like, the boogeyman is real, right? Like that's the whole movie. She's saying to the kids, like, boogeyman's not real. Boogeyman's not real, Tommy. Boogeyman's not real. And by the end of the movie, like death has come to her doorstep, and like it realizes like the boogeyman's real, right? The evil is real, and now I can no longer afford to be naive about this anymore.
It's also, and I don't even know it's a thought I just had, but all the other friends are having sex, but she's the mom.
Yeah, right.
Like the rest of them are acting less mature, but also having sex with their boyfriends.
She's the ultimate babysitter. She actually cares for the kids.
And she becomes the mom figure of protecting them, taking care of them. We're gonna, go across the street and get the neighbors to call the police.
Yeah.
Like she is the mom of those kids in this context where there are no parents.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though she's the one who's at the beginning is, the least mature because she doesn't have a boyfriend, she's not having sex.
Which is right. But I feel like that's an interesting commentary at that time. I feel like, and it's reflective of the time that the movie was made, and maybe also why it's so seminal, because it was that transitional moment to something else that probably had begun before 1978, but really fully blossomed by the time you get to like Friday the 13th.
Right.
And, like, here I had sex and now I'm doing a handstand and oops, I got split in half. Like, on to the next murder or something like that. So, all right. So,
should we do some hot takes?
yeah, hot takes on Halloween. You got
Nick,
next.
go.
I don't know how hot this take is, but I think of all of the entire franchise after the first movie, my second favorite Halloween movie is Halloween 4, which is so underrated. It's like the Dream Warriors of the Halloween franchise. It's so good.
So good.
The ending is great, and it shows the cyclical nature of it. But then 5 really shits the bed because it does not continue the wonderful momentum of 4. I think they switched directors or producers or something. But 5 gets so bad, considering how awesome the ending of 4 was. And I don't want to spoil it for whoever's listening.
Danielle
But the
Harris, another one though, who I think should have been nominated for an Academy Award if she was
Totally.
today.
Totally.
Yeah. Interesting.
I want, Blumhouse should have picked up, how they did, their Halloweens took place right after the first Halloween, and we forget about, Halloween 2, and obviously Season of the Witch and all that, which didn't factor into the Michael Myers timeline. I want Blumhouse or someone to do, a better Halloween 5 remake or requel. I want to see what actually should have happened with Danielle Harris's character, because the ending of Halloween 4 is so intense.
Is she the little girl in Halloween 5 again, and she goes to live with the other, or is it like where you see how he escapes at the end of Halloween 4 down that shaft and he gets out sort of, and then Halloween 5 picks up years and years later? I'm trying to remember Halloween 5.
Halloween 5 picks up right after 4.
So Danielle Harris is still in it, and
she's still in it. She's a little girl, but the way that they handle her and what happened to her is just really uninteresting, and they just kind of forget all about it, even though it was such a intense ending in Halloween 4 when she murders.
Right, she murders. She kills him, but she also doesn't she kill her sister? What is
She
it?
kills her sister.
Her
Yeah.
sister, yeah.
So we just see the
She puts on
cyclical
the mask,
nature
she's
of
standing
this.
at the top of the stairs.
Exactly,
Yeah, right.
and that's it. Ends, and then even and Dr. Loomis is like, no,
What's the one
this
where he's
starts
killed and blown
again.
into the mine shaft?
Oh no, not Loomis.
Is that 5?
Loomis died. No, Loomis doesn't die in 2. Sorry, I'm
No,
fucking
Loomis
going
is
on.
still in 2.
He
Loomis
dies.
is in
We
4.
think he dies because he sets everybody on fire, but then he shows back up again
Right.
in 4.
We'll have to review all the.
Yeah, I know. You gotta
When we do
fact
other
check all
sequel
this.
movies, we'll do the great return of the villain thing. So.
Yeah.
All right, Katie, what's your hot take?
So of the entire Halloween franchise, I actually think the scariest one is Season of the Witch.
Oh, Season of the Witch.
Hey,
I
okay,
think-
get on the Atkins diet.
I think the imagery in it is really creepy.
It is
And
really creepy.
it has nothing to do with Halloween. It's its own thing. Technically, it's part of the franchise. I think if you look at it as its own thing, it's fun and it's good. But I love the original Halloween. Like I said, I watch it every year. I think it's a great movie. I don't find it that scary.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is because just the way my brain processes horror, I respond to frightening images. and the movie is conceptually very scary, but it doesn't have that thing that after I watch it, I can still see behind my eyes.
Sure.
I have a hot take
Go
after you
do
go.
yours.
Okay,
Mine
okay.
takes us into another thing.
I hope mine doesn't bump on yours. Okay, this is actually probably my better hot take. In terms of original movies, not based on pre-existing IP, I think Halloween is a top 5 most influential movie in popular culture ever. Potentially top 3. And I'm not talking about, like, again, you can't count the Marvel universe, like, that's all based on, Stephen King or anything like that. But I think how this influenced other movies,
Right.
how this influenced the holiday of Halloween, how this influenced video games, just this particular screenplay. Now, obviously you could talk about things that had influence on this, like Black Christmas, like Psycho, like Texas Chainsaw, but this is technically an original screenplay and an independent film. I really struggle, other than Star Wars, to think about original movies that had the same impact as this one.
It's been here before Marvel, and it's been gone afterwards. By the way, in terms of if you were going to count influence in terms of how many, let's call it pop culture references come up, just as an aside, one of my all-time favorites is in Baby Driver, when they're like, okay, get the Halloween mask for the heist, and then like the heist is happening, and he shows up with the Michael Myers like from Austin Powers mask, and he's like, no, Michael Myers, the serial. He's like, this is the Michael Myers mask. He's like, the serial killer Michael Myers. That's a good hot take. I like that. So not that scary. Favorite of the bunch is Halloween 3.
Scariest of the bunch. Not favorite of the bunch, but scariest.
Influential, top 3 influential movies of all time. All right, here's my hot take, and this is actually getting into the mythology, and I guess we could wrap up with this because I think it's worth discussing. And I'm curious to get your take on this, Nick, and I suppose yours as the historian. But my hot take is, and this is really part 2, because this is where it gets ham-fisted in, and I don't like it at all. The whole idea that Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister, it drives me crazy, because there's nothing about that's present in the first movie. Like, the whole idea is just sort of like, he just comes back to the town he was in, right? Like, it's almost like, why do the zombies come to the mall? Like, that's what they know. Why did he like drive back to the town? Like, he came home. Like, that's it. He didn't come home to kill his sister. He didn't come home. And so I hate the idea that like, and that's the only thing about when you get into 4 and 5, because then they started introducing the whole like cults, right? With the triangle thing. And so like, I feel like that whole, oh, they're related is spins it off. And I know that's kept Jamie, in the franchise, and it's kept the Laurie Strode, and, it's made her sort of who she is as far as that character goes. So, all right, but that's what makes it a hot take. Like, I feel like the movie works in some ways without that, but...
Yeah, I mean, it undoes the randomness element of his murderous streak. It gives him an actual intention, which I think is antithetical to who he is. He's a random killing machine.
The randomness is what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and also, okay, so now, and then I also feel like this was a result of another thing, which was, so like, Michael Myers gets up at the end, right? Like, it's the classic last shot. And again, another rule that I feel like sort of began with Halloween, which is like, when you think the villain's dead, they're not really dead.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, 1 minute he's there, the next minute he's not. That I also think is just important, because suddenly slashers became supernatural. Mm-hmm. And that sometimes works, but it was interesting, again, when we like sort of watched Scream, and we can talk about this when we watch Scream, but like the thing that he did, John Carpenter and Michael Myers as a character, by bringing this horror to the suburbs and having it be very real and very random, and seemingly it could be anybody. There's really nothing supernatural about it until, and even the end, right? Like, you can imagine, like, yeah, he got up, dragged his ass 5 blocks away. We found him in a dumpster. He's dead. The guy's a mass murderer, and like, that's the end of it. But like, then he's walking around in the second one, and by the second one, he's full-fledged supernatural. And it's hard not to see like the jump scare at the end of Friday the 13th, where Jason comes out of the, like, it just feels like they were sitting around going like, all right, like, well, Halloween, he got up and walked, like, what could we do? Like, all right, what if she's out of the, and all of a sudden, all of those slashers for the next decade and a half are all supernatural.
Yep.
Are all something else. And supernatural is scary. Supernatural has its place, to be sure. We're going to talk about those, but like, there is something just scary about the random killing machine that you just happen to live in the wrong town.
Yeah.
Right? You live in the wrong town.
Yeah, I feel like Michael Myers was. I mean, I might be misinterpreting it. I saw him as superhuman. But does he get supernatural? Because like obviously
There's
Jason
nothing
becomes a
about-
zombie after a while.
Right.
But like Michael Myers
There's
gets
nothing
shot and he
about
comes
Michael-
back. But
there's other than like you could sit there at the end and say that he's getting like Loomis shoots him in the he shoots him out the window. Before that, she just stabs him in the eye with your favorite scene with the hanger, the coat
Right.
hanger, because she's hanging in the closet. and he
the-
smashes in and she.
It's
like,
knitting
it's that
needle
shot.
to the neck
Right, knitting,
and
right.
then coat hanger to the eye.
She does him in domestically.
He goes with it.
Right.
It's a lot.
So I feel like it's it's one of those things that is again interesting to look back on, because part of maybe what made like, hey, we're not going to overthink how he drove the car, and hey, we're not going to think, like, they just sort of went at the end. They were like, I have an idea. Like, what if
You know what would be scary?
you know, it'd be scary. This guy just gets up. He's not there. He's not there anymore. Like he's like a vampire
poof.
in that way. And suddenly, everything then. Because Carpenter directed the second one, or he didn't. He did.
it's a good question. I think I thought he did, didn't
He
he?
did too. But I don't know.
I should know
I never
this,
should
I
know
don't
but-
think he did actually.
All right, well, put it in the comments if you're listening to this.
He
Did
definitely
Carpenter-
contributed. I thought he. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Look it up. Did you look it up? All right. All right. Well, so Halloween, which we're a few
Halloween?
weeks away from Halloween. So
Yeah,
you'll be
let's get
watching
ready.
it.
I
You're
will.
watching it. All right.
All
Is
right.
it the first, or does it end Halloween? Do you like finish your
It's the end of the day. That is I'm about
and
to.
then you're out
I'm
trick-or-treating?
about to go to bed, and I'm like, no, I get back from trick or treating.
Oh, so it's like a post Halloween.
It's a post
You watch
Halloween.
the movie,
Yeah.
and then like wait for somebody to show up and murder you while you're babysitting the
There you
children.
go.
Right.
That's
I like that.
what you got to
Very
do.
nice, good,
Love it.
very good.
All right.
sweet.
Well, thank you for watching and listening, and please join us on the next episode.
There you go.
Way After Dark.